Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's YouTube video and, of course, podcast episode. Today, I would like to talk about how I learned Gujarati. So, Gujarati is a language that's spoken in India, and I grew up with this language. So, a little bit of backstory. My mom grew up in Canada. In the household with family, she spoke in Gujarati. But when you grow up in a country that doesn't speak your heritage language, so in her case, Gujarati was her heritage language, English was really her strongest language because she grew up in Canada. What that meant is she spoke Gujarati fluently, but she didn't speak it nearly as well as she spoke English. Make sense? Because, well, she didn't grow up in India. Logical enough. When I was born, it was very important to my mom that I speak Gujarati. So she would only speak Gujarati in the house. She told everyone in the family to only speak Gujarati with me. Even the people that maybe were less fluent in Gujarati were also told to speak Gujarati with me. So it got to the point where when I was about 8 years old ish, something like that, I didn't know in my family who was stronger in English and who was stronger in Gujarati. I would go to my uncle sometimes, who's definitely stronger in English, speak to him in Gujarati, and he'd be like, no, talk to me in English. I'd be like, English? Oh, my mom said to speak with everyone in Gujarati, and this is the family, and we speak Gujarati, and this, that, the other thing. And he'd be like, no, like English with me. Oh, okay. So it was a strong emphasis on using Gujarati with the family from a very, very young age. I was surrounded by it. But again, just because my mom had limits in her Gujarati, I only really spoke to people in my family in Gujarati. My Gujarati was even worse than my mom's Gujarati. It almost like grandparents are the best. My mom is a tier below that. I was a tier below that. Something like that. Each generation, it gets diluted. Maybe that's a way to view it. So I had a good conversational base, I suppose you could say. And then when I was, this would have been back in 2018, I believe, I decided that I wanted to study the language formally. There were a few reasons for this. One, I couldn't read and write. Two, I only really spoke my family's variant of Gujarati, which I remember when I went to India one time, they didn't understand my Gujarati and I didn't understand them. So I was like, there's something clearly going on there. I had a lot of gaps in my Gujarati. There's a lot of stuff I didn't know. I wanted to get better. In short, I felt weird that my French and Spanish was better than my Gujarati. In fact, I even wondered at one point if my Mandarin was better than Gujarati. And I was like, oh my God, is that acceptable? In 2018, I started to study Gujarati formally. Now, my Gujarati learning journey was very different from the other languages that I've learned, most notably because there aren't that many resources to learn Gujarati. For Mandarin, for Spanish, for French, for different languages, there are lots of resources. You can take classes, textbooks, YouTube videos, podcasts, whatever you want. There are resources for it, but Gujarati, there are very few. So initially, my grandpa would teach me. He would just sit down with me and try and teach me how to read and things like that. I went to India for 2 months and we found a private instructor. I could make a whole separate video about the experiences with that private instructor because that was a very life-changing experience to work with her. But I had class 6 hours a day, 6 days a week with this lady. Private lesson. She came to the house, and that was for essentially 2 months. When I came back, I continued to learn Gujarati more through, I would call it unstructured self-study. So I would try to follow YouTube channels and try to learn by understanding what they're saying, looking up different words. I started to offer some Gujarati classes, so preparing for the classes would really help me on the reading front because I'd have to read materials and prepare materials for the classes, help me on the spelling front because I have to spell things in Gujarati sometimes to prepare their materials. It helped me on the listening front sometimes because I'd watch a video that we're going to use in a class, and then there'd be words I wouldn't know, so I'd have to go look those words up. I offered a free drop-in Gujarati class at one point as well, and there was some native speakers who came regularly, so that was a way that I learned Gujarati through them. But it's interesting, after that trip to India, all the study I've done for Gujarati has been relatively unstructured. And I am better in Gujarati today. It's kind of interesting. I'm much better in Gujarati today than I was back in 2018, even after that trip. So we're what, 5 years later now? 5 years later. But I haven't really followed a very structured approach to trying to learn that language, which for me is novel because for other languages, I did follow some unstructured approaches, but I would always have some structured things that I did too. But Gujarati, not nearly as much. I don't have a clear, unlike, for example, Mandarin, which is a language I'm still learning right now. When I learn languages, I want to reach a very high level, like a very advanced level in that language. So for Mandarin, which is a language I'm still learning, I have a relatively good idea of what I need to do to reach my advanced level, and I feel like it's just a matter of time, and I should be able to get there. For Gujarati, the process is a little bit more murky. I know certain things I think I'll do, but it's a little bit more of a murky process, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what, how, and when I'm going to be able to get to the level that I need. And that's still something that I'm sure the pathway will present itself to me in some way, shape, or form. But as of right now, it's a little bit murkier than it is, for example, for Mandarin. So thank you for watching this or listening to this. If you have any questions, as always, you're welcome to let me know in the comments or contact me directly by visiting Azren, thelanguagenerd.com/contact. That's AZ or ZREN, thelanguagenerd.com/contact. Thanks.